think. I don't know. Dave.
Welcome to the Midcoast Community Council meeting of December 13th, 2017. The council members please introduce themselves.
Excuse me. Chris Johnson.
Dan Haggerty.
Claire Toutant.
Brian Kwan.
Dave Olson.
Lisa Ketchum. So we have a little bit different order of business tonight. And the first item is Supervisor Horsey's going to swear in our new council member, Barbara Mathewson, who was appointed to fill a vacancy left by resignation of Laura Stein for a term ending December 2020.
Sorry.
You sick? Wow.
Sorry.
Wow.
Maybe you should go over near the podium so the microphone can.
Okay, so I'm going to say aye, and right after I say aye, you'll say aye and repeat your name.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
I
I, Barbara Mathewson,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
foreign and domestic,
foreign or domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge
and I will well and faithfully discharge
the duties upon which I am about to enter.
the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Last thing, you're going to sign this.
And the cookies are in front of me?
Yeah, the cookies are in front of you. You have to have them all. Have you sign up for them?
Okay.
And that makes it official. Okay, something like that?
You can have a seat here. Yeah, we just have to finish this up. We're going to elect officers for 2018, and just a reminder, we appointed Dan Haggerty as treasurer last September to serve until the end of 2018, so we just have chair, vice chair, and secretary to, so do I have a nomination for chair? Speak up.
The cookies are killing me.
You're nominating
Can't be
cookies
chair.
for
Yeah,
chair?
I nominate whoever brought the cookies. I would like to nominate Dave Olson for chair.
For his cookies?
And also his abilities, but yes, for his cookies.
I'll second that. All in favor? 7-0. Dave, it is. Let's just wrap up the other two. Nomination for vice chair.
I would like to nominate Claire Toutant for vice chair.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
7-0. All right. And secretary.
I'd like to nominate Chris Johnson for secretary.
I had my heart set on being a secretary, I'll tell you the
Does,
truth.
does Chris accept the nomination?
Well, if you have your heart set on it, Lisa, I would really
Okay,
just
sure.
not want to disappoint you on that. So I would defer to Lisa if she really wants to do it.
Okay, then.
I'd like to nominate Lisa Ketchum for secretary.
I'll
second
second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
7-0. Okay, I'll turn the meeting over to Dave.
All right. As the new chair, I welcome you all to the last meeting of the year for us. So we are on public comment and announcements. Does anybody want to make a public comment? Okay.
I'm Harvey Warback, and I'm speaking for the Half Moon Bay City Council, who would like to stay in touch with our Midcoast neighbors. A couple of items to report on. At our last meeting, we decided that we would draft an ordinance to allow the Class 4 cultivation of marijuana within the city limits. Class 4 is the starter plants that don't smell and environmentally are much more benign than the mature plants. So we are going to draft that ordinance. It'll be available to the public. We'll have at least one community meeting where the exact wording of the ordinance will be available, and then we'll take it from there. We also directed staff to propose or create a ballot measure that'll probably be on the June ballot that would allow the cultivation and perhaps sale of mature plants. And that will be on the June ballot, perhaps, might be in November, but it looks like we're aiming for June. So that's one item that I think is of interest to the coast side. And secondly, you probably heard that we accepted the resignation of our city manager effective January 26th. And we're going to interview candidates for an interim city manager position next week, because we would like to have some overlap with the outgoing city manager and the interim city manager. I'll be glad to answer any questions. I don't know if the public comment is the way to do this, but I'm okay with answering questions that anybody has. Hearing none, thank you.
Thank you, Harvey. Steve?
Thank you, Chair Olson. Congratulations on your nomination and election to the office. My name is Steve McGraw. I'm the General Manager for the San Mateo County Harbor District. And first of all, I'd like to wish you all the very best of the holidays, and congratulations on the wrapping up of another successful year of civic engagement on the coast side. A couple of things to talk about out of the Harbor District. First of all, there was a lighted boat festival last Saturday night, very well attended, a perfect evening for such an event. It might have had a better attendance, however, it was also a perfect evening for a very good football game for the Half Moon Bay Cougars, and congratulations to them. Breaking news this afternoon: at a comparatively brief and very low-key public hearing, the Coastal Commission granted the permit to World Surf League for the Maverick Surf Contest with a one-year permit. On other matters, let's see, the Romeo Pier, we're still waiting for that right window to avail ourselves of Dutra's break in their schedule to take advantage of the terrific cost reduction we got by being willing to wait. We're gearing up towards sealing and striping a whole section of the parking lot, the main parking lot. Separate from our sidewalk reconstruction project, which is moving forward through the process. The county and the Coastal Commission have just agreed to a consolidation of that permit application because the project falls in dual jurisdictions, primary jurisdiction of the Coastal Commission and primary jurisdiction of the county. And so when that happens, Coastal Commission staff and county planning staff have to agree that Coastal Commission will handle the permitting of the coastal development permit for that project. So hopefully that'll get wrapped up very soon. I'd love to see that on the January Coastal Commission agenda, and then we'll be moving forward. Other than that, I'll be happy to answer any questions of the council.
Stan?
Yeah, on the parking lot reconfiguration.
Right.
With the step out of the sidewalk.
Yes.
Question, the existing parking rows,
Yes.
is that gonna be altered, become more narrow? to
No,
make
the
room to make-
the sidewalk is extending out, and that diagonal parking across the front of the businesses is going away. That's getting made up for by a reconfiguration of the parking adjacent to the Harbor Masters building.
Right.
And the travel lanes will not be changed in width at all.
Okay, thank you.
Chris?
Steve, what is going to, are there any plans for the materials from Romeo Pier? And specifically, I'm thinking that there's the one panel that has the crab still on it that you can see from the shore, and part of Plan Princeton, there was some discussion of possibly like a little, I don't think museum is the right word, but some kind of display or something. And I'm just thinking of what I've seen down at Monterey. You know, they've got displays, visitor serving things that look like they're pieces of the original wharf or pieces of a boat or something. I think it would be kind of cool if there were a few pieces of the pier that got put into a warehouse or something until such time as an exhibit or a display or something was made. You know, we had the signage and the benches at the end of Broadway, and if we had a similar kind of construction, a display exhibit, and we had a piece of the pier, that might be kind of cool too. So, I mean, if you could just take 2 or 3 of the big panels that are the most obvious, the one with the crab on it, and maybe a couple of the other ones, even like a shed, and disassemble it into 3 or 4 walls, and just tuck it away into storage, and and then it will be there, because otherwise it'll be lost forever.
Right. I've made a note. We'll certainly do what we can. I believe that, I know that we tested the materials for the existence of lead-based paint, and I don't think there is any, if I recall. So that's good. The difficulty might be in logistically managing that, because literally we can't put any equipment out on the end of the pier. It's all going to be done from a barge-mounted work platform, cranes, or even an extended reach excavator on a barge. I mean, it's going to be a tricky project to do. It's not like we can drive out and work our way back. But I made a note, and I would love to see that happen. So
cool. Thanks for listening.
I want to second Chris's concern. I think it's an excellent idea. I think
Okay.
there's a lot of potential for an idea like that to save some of the heritage siding.
Yep. Good.
Did you find a place to put the sand from the boat launch dredging?
We have had encouraging noises from the airport.
Encouraging noises, okay.
Still working on it. This is, for the benefit, this is not the major surface beach project. We're getting very encouraging noises on that too. There is a meeting of the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary Advisory Council on Friday in Monterey. Our staff, John Moran, Director of Ops, and Brad Dammit, our consultant, will be attending that meeting. And we're looking at finding a way through the permitting. We're still hopeful for that project to be able to move forward in 2018. The project to which you refer is an emergency dredging that we're trying to do at the boat launch ramp, which suffered from last winter's excessive storms and an increase in the deposit of sediment there. Because of the emergency declaration that took place, however, FEMA has agreed to reimburse us for our costs associated with that project once we can figure out where to temporarily stage the sand until we can figure out how to put it back at Surface Beach.
Anybody else have a question? Thank you, Steve.
All right, thank you. And happy holidays.
You too. Yes, happy holiday. Anybody else wish to speak under public comment or government announcements? No? All right. Seeing nothing, I will close public comment and we'll move on to the consent agenda. We have one item on the consent agenda, the minutes from November 8th, which was a long meeting. Do I hear a motion?
Move the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Carried 7-0. All right, on to our regular agenda, and tonight we have Don Horsley giving us his update on Midcoast 2017 priorities. Thank you, Don.
Congratulations on becoming the chair. Okay, so let me start off. I don't know if you want to be asking me questions as we're going along, but I certainly welcome any question you have as we're going through all these different priorities. I will say that you have to remember that my district has 150,000 people in it, of San Carlos, Menlo Park, Belmont, Atherton, Woodside, San Carlos, Half Moon Bay, always down to Pacifica, always down to the Santa Cruz border. So this is just a smattering of the projects that we have to deal with it. But the difference here on the coast side is I'm like your mayor, I guess. You're my deputy mayor, I guess. And I really do rely a lot on MCC, and I do appreciate the input that we get from the MCC that helps us make decisions. But let me start off with the parallel trail, which, as you know, is a two-way bike and ped trail always from Murata Road to Coronado Street, east of Highway 1. And we expect to have about 60% of the plans done by January of 2018. It did take us some additional time to ensure that Caltrans, their required type selection for the bridge and a retaining wall were completed. They have a specific standards that our Parks Department has some different ideas, but I think we've kind of worked our way through that. Next one is a roundabout, and the intersection Cypress. Actually, you forget about, even if you didn't do anything with Big Wave, even if it never happens, the fact matter is the traffic there actually does warrant, it meets the warrants for traffic signalization. But I've heard loud and clear every time I talk to people on the coast side that they don't want to see any more traffic lights. So we are looking at, or I've actually pushed the Caltrans and our staff to actually look at a roundabout at that intersection. So we did some design charrettes. They were held in August of 2017, and actually walked out there with myself. And since then, the consultant's been working with Caltrans and the county to develop a preliminary design. We have to understand how much space is going to be required. The original, or if we do build a roundabout, we also have to figure out the cost of it, and then how we would work out a cost sharing with the state. It's essentially the state's responsibility, and if Big Wave ever goes or starts, they have a responsibility to contribute as well. In any case, when you start off with a roundabout, you actually don't put 2 lanes in, at least initially, but you have to plan for 2 in the event that traffic gets worse. And the reason is that if you have a 1-lane roundabout, it will slow traffic up, but according to our traffic planners, it will slow people up by about 20 seconds. Compare that with a stop light, it's about 2 minutes. So it's actually, even though you have to slow up and it takes some time to get through it, at the same time, it really doesn't delay your trip that much. It does slow down traffic, no doubt about it, but it's not the same as a traffic signal. It's also safer because you don't have broadside accidents. But we also have to build for the 2-lane, and the reason we have to do for a 2-lane is if the traffic does get worse, who knows, seems to have gone worse all over. If you don't have the 2 lanes, eventually what will happen is you'll end up with a backup that'll be a mile long. So that's why we have to figure out, we have to plan for it. In the event, in case, and I'm not saying I necessarily think the traffic is going to get a lot worse, but I've been in the county all my life, and I've seen traffic get way worse than I ever anticipated. So in any case, I think that's in progress. Next one is Gray Whale Cove Crossing. We've been working again with Caltrans on this project, and as it's really within their right-of-way. And we recently submitted encroachment permits to Caltrans requesting permission to access the right-of-way as needed to develop detailed designs. One of the things we have to do there is create an acceleration lane. Basically, it's you have to widen it to some extent to create a lit lane so when people are coming out of the parking lot, they don't necessarily have to go through all the traffic at one time. So the design team, it's actually AECOM and our Transportation Authority. They're working on designs. It'll take about 10 months until it's 100% completed. County is really the sponsor for the design and permitting phase, and Caltrans will implement the construction phase. But we've agreed that the county will pay for it because they won't. Even though, in fact, actually Ellie can tell you better than I, the number of people who cross that road is phenomenal.
Over 60,000 a year. Over 60,000.
We have videos, YouTube videos of families running across the roadway trying to avoid the cars. We also do some improvement in that parking lot as well. And the reason for that is that, we don't, when somebody's coming out of the parking lot, don't want their wheels spinning and then get stuck, We want them to be able to get out, so they're not getting hit by an oncoming vehicle. Next is planned principle.
Wait,
Yes.
you said 10 months roughly from now till the design is complete?
Approximately.
Okay.
Right.
And just another question regarding crossing. So, if you're, will there be any widening of the roads, or it's just going to stay the same?
There will be some widening, yes. Yes. The Princeton, Plant Princeton, the shoreline management plan is really nearly complete. I was glad that Steve McGraw is gone, but we actually are interested in his sand. And I didn't realize that we're still having difficulty with the airport, and I'll have to look into that, see if I can help them out with that. In any case, the plan addresses shoreline management and coastal access with regard to shoreline hazards, including, we have to be concerned with both erosion as well as sea level rise. So our next step is really to circulate the final draft plan in early 2018 to the Technical Advisory Committee, the Steering Committee, MCC, and the public early next year. And we have to hold some public meetings to review the draft plan and begin a public hearing process. A shoreline, we would like to actually create a trail that goes all around to give people greater access to the shoreline. At the same time, we've heard some people indicate that, gee, they really don't want anybody else to come out there, but the whole purpose of the Coastal Commission and the Coastal Act was to increase access to the coast. So we're not going to put a big sign out there and saying that there's a trail here, but we want to make sure that people who are aware of Princeton have access to the shore. Connect the coast side, which seems to have been, I think I've been dealing with this for 7 years. The LCP update, it requires an LCP the LCP, let's start that over again. The local coastal plan, which is the LCP, it actually requires us to do a comprehensive transportation management plan. That's the CTMP, and which develops and evaluates measures to mitigate the impact of growth in the region and the impact of growth that's had on our transportation systems. So one of the things that's in the plan, it's a land use policy options, such as lot retirement, which is going to be relatively controversial. So what I saw one of the recent overlays that indicates there would be about 148 lots so far that could be retired under this program, all within the Midcoast, and they're either zoned resource management, coastal zone district, or planned agricultural district. No real residential zone properties are really proposed at this point to be retired. But there's an advantage with a lot of the lots that have to be retired really are pretty much, could be next to a residential lot. And there are lots of things, incentives to have people retire those lots. So for example, you might allow them to build a second unit or something if they were willing to retire a lot. So the final outreach process is actually going to begin in the end of January of 2018. A short-term rental ordinance, which we have worked on for, it seems like about 2 years. It actually has been about a 2-year process. This is for vacation rentals of less than 30 days in residential zoned areas. The final draft was approved by the board in June of 2017, and really the next step is actually for the California Coastal Commission to review the draft ordinance. They have it, and they have not acted on it yet. I don't think there will be any problems with it, but it has taken a long period of time. Other parts of the county are interested in it, so I'm not sure if we will end up extending it to other communities in the unincorporated area as well. And I think some of the cities might be looking at it as well. Corey?
I have one question on that, Don.
Yeah.
So at one point, they thought it was actually going to require an amendment to the LCP, and then it sounded like they just need to certify it. Do you know what the current status is for that?
I don't. It's a good question.
It's on the agenda for December.
Oh, is it? I missed it.
Maybe it happened today.
In the Coastal Commission?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I haven't seen Carol Groom, so I don't know.
Great. Do you happen to remember for the certification or amendment? Well, it must not be an amendment, Don, but
I assumed you had seen that.
yeah, I missed it.
So the coastal commission is meeting today?
Yeah.
December
It is?
13th, yeah.
Okay. I was out of the office today. I was with the Coalition for Safe Schools all morning, so I didn't hear that. I haven't seen Carol, so I'm sure she's gonna let me know.
Yeah.
The Quarry Park Master Plan, the overview is that the Parks Department has really developed, well, as you know, they're developing that master plan for Quarry Park. Really gonna help guide the development of that park and improvements over a period of time, at least over the next 20 years. Murata Surf East and West are actually gonna be included in the plan, and the topics to be considered during the planning process include review of the historic documents, site assessments, sediment management strategies, analysis of future features, biological assessment, fire management, recreational uses, et cetera. It's actually gonna be probably a more regional park.
Yeah.
That would be my guess, putting all those properties together. So the current status is we've had 4 community meetings that have been held to gather input. I think you've been real active in that, Dave. I think there might be a 5th community meeting in the new year, so we don't have any specific information on that now. The other project is the Ohlone Portola Trail Committee. I'm supposed to say Portola. I think that's the correct pronunciation, apparently. It's a trail feasibility. We tomorrow going to be interviewing the feasibility consultants to work on that project. The idea is actually to Portola, when he came from Monterey up to the San Francisco Bay, and people say that Portola discovered San Francisco Bay. No, he didn't. He rediscovered it. It had been discovered already by the Ohlone Indians. And one of the things, it's kind of interesting, as you're part of that project, and it's really fascinating that in every single creek, San Mateo County, there was a different indigenous group that claimed that area as their territory. So in any case, we're developing a Parks Foundation given us a $10,000 grant to develop a logo for that project. And the idea is going to be that we want to kind of figure out all the trail that Portola walked. It's really actually probably the indigenous people. It was their trade routes that went all the way from Baja California up to Oregon. In any case, he obviously didn't go to Oregon. He went to San Francisco, and he kind of circled around and came all the way back. He never would have been able to survive physically had it not been for the Indians who helped him. So we are kind of working on figuring out how to mark that trail, and in some cases connect it up. We looked at the maps that Post has put together for us, and it looks like most of the land is actually in public ownership. So it's either Post or Mid-Peninsula Open Space District. Some is also county, and some is federal lands as well. So we'll be actually, one of the reasons that we're interested in doing this now is that the anniversary of the 250th year anniversary for Portola's rediscovery of San Francisco Bay comes up in 2019, and so we're kind of aiming for that, putting together really a program of sort of a historical recognition of how this area really was really inhabited by indigenous people, and the thought that the local Indians were these shell mounds, that they were places where they dumped shell. Not really true. They were actually had religious significance to them. So they weren't just dumping grounds. They were actually of significance to the tribe. And I think you also know that we have a significant problem with raves at Tunitas Creek, and that's another we've been working on for a couple of years. And we initially thought that, well, we could have some kind of a management process. We tried to do different things with parking. Didn't work because people are willing to sacrifice getting a $35 ticket so they can go onto this beach and have a rave and do whatever they want with no controls and no oversight and nobody picking up the garbage. So it was really a site that it was just littered with trash, garbage, human waste. It's a sort of an environmental tragedy, and the only way we really are going to be able to control it is if the county owns it. So we the owner of the property is called V Trust, has sold it for about, well, the price was $5 million to Post. They will then transfer it to the county. We're gonna end up spending probably, it's gonna be expensive, but we're gonna have to increase, ranger out there and probably install a ranger station and probably have 24 hours, 24/7 supervision to control the beach. And it's really, if you've ever been there, and by the time it's actually ready to be part of our county park system, it's probably gonna take about 3 years. But it is probably one of the most magnificent stretches of beaches in the county. And maybe, well, you know, what, it's for us, it's both a blessing and curse that we have so many beaches, because that, you know, you go over to Marin County, it's got, what, 2 beaches, and they're really not accessible, and we seem to have a beach every half mile. But this beach it turned out that it was only known to local people for the most part. And I've lived here all my life. I never knew about it. You know, I was in the sheriff's department running up and down Highway 1. I didn't know about it. But once social media made people aware and showed them how to get down, how to climb all these cliffs, how to go over the areas to some little road that was owned by some folks and they could easily trespass and get on the beach, then it became, we had raves of up to 500 people. Actually became internationally known. And so we've had people come from Germany to have, I'm not gonna say they have raves on it, but it's a fabulous place. It's a mile long and about 200 yards wide. It's also an area with lots of poaching. Again, it turns out that, I don't know much about crabs, but I know they lay their eggs there, and the poachers would come at nighttime and pick up 100 or so, or better, crabs, and periodically they'd be caught by either the sheriff's department or fish and wildlife. And then just on countywide efforts, one of my projects is there's a thing called Home for All. It's a project for housing. We have an affordable housing fund, and we have a goal of building somewhere in the neighborhood of about 5,000 homes throughout Bell County, not the coast side, but throughout Bell County. If we can actually get Brisbane, they have the largest plot of land available in the county, it's about 680 acres. They have the potential for building around 4,000 homes there. And one would say, why do that? What our problem is in this county, we have, it's a desirable place to be. You know, we have all these great universities, Stanford, University of California, and not to say anything, not to denigrate other schools like Notre Dame and SF State, which I went to, but we've got so many assets in this area. You have SF International. The job market in San Mateo County is just incredible. So we've created 73,000 jobs in 4 years. Not we didn't do it, the government didn't do it, but all these companies are doing it. And then South San Francisco, at the harbor, at Oyster Point, they anticipate having $2 billion of office and commercial development. Not million, $2 billion over the next few years. And they're planning on building about 4,000 units in the surrounding areas as well. So it's so one of my projects is the Affordable Housing Fund. Myself and Supervisor Warren Slocum, we basically, we're really looking at affordable housing. And the reason for affordable housing is that the area median income in San Mateo County is over 100,000. It's higher than San Francisco, higher than Santa Clara, higher than Marin County. And our rents are higher than everyone else as well. The average rent in this county is about, I don't have the exact number today, but it's somewhere in the neighborhood of about, one bedroom apartment is about $2,800 a month. We are working with the city of Pacifica School District. They have a site that has been closed. They want to build 45 units. Now, we can't fund it for them, but we can loan them money essentially on a very low-cost basis. They own the land, and we can loan them money basically for all the architectural, all the infrastructure stuff that they have to start up. But the actual building, they'll have to do certificates of participation. So it'll be 45 units. The lowest rent that they can charge and manage to make that facility cost neutral is $2,500 a month. The average teacher in Pacifica School District starts off at 35,000. The new teacher in this school district and Cabrillo, you pay a lot more. You may pay 50,000, and your top income for a tenured teacher, 12 years and a master's degree, makes 100,000. So we have a real problem for all of our service people. For police and fire, they're not going to live in the community. They actually do. Police and fire probably do better than a fully tenured teacher in terms of salary, but they have, because of the way they have their shifts, and because of the fact that they're not doing prepping for the next day, and they're not looking at homework of kids and grading papers and stuff, they live pretty far away. But not your teachers can't. They can't be on the road for a couple hours a day and come back into a classroom and be prepared to deal with kids. Having 3 kids myself is tough enough dealing with them at home, but having 30 kids in a classroom, and if you just have to drive through traffic of an hour and a half to get to work, you're spent. And if you then drive another hour and a half afterwards, how do you ever spend any time, quality time after school, or meet with kids or parents? So it's a real problem, and we're going to have to, we're going to have to do something for our service people who provide services to basically the most important people in our lives, our kids. So the other thing I deal with is homelessness. And our homeless count is in this county actually is roughly about this. Well, we claim. We're not being ingenuous about this, but we say our homeless count is going down a bit. But that's only because what happens is that once we get them stabilized, and this is a project that we call rapid rehousing, they go across the bay. And the ones that we can't get to, and you're seeing more of it on the coast now, the number of homeless people on the coast is dramatically increasing. So we have them on Airport Street, and they're on these run-out RVs, and we have them in the creeks in Half Moon Bay City. Half Moon Bay, we're working with the city of Half Moon Bay. Unfortunately, we were working with the former city manager, and so that's kind of, the whole thing's kind of falling apart. But we are kind of extending our homeless facility in Redwood City, and I had this, as working with the city, well, we'll see who they replace her with, but we thought that, originally I thought the number was fairly small. It's not. It's at least 40, and some have animals. And so we're expanding our homeless shelter over in Redwood City and trying to do that as fast as possible. I originally wanted about 75 units, but pressing them. So I'm going to get them to increase it by about 36. And then we're going to actually close the encampment in the creek, because you can't have people living in a creek and just with all human waste is going in the creek, and that's just as unacceptable. So we're going to have to move them all out. And I know there's a well-meaning group of people in the city who've talked about temporary shelters, and they talked about having a shelter. Actually, it's one of the churches. And I told them I wouldn't fund it, and because I don't know what they are. I don't know who they are. I haven't vetted them, and they were about 1 block away from the school. And I have enough people mad at me. I didn't want to have a bunch of moms mad at me for having homeless people 1 block away from the school where their kids are in school. So we've been trying to find something. The only thing we could do is to try and move all of them at one time over to Redwood City. If they won't go, because some people won't, they won't stay in the coast, they're going to have to go someplace else. They cannot live in that creek. And we have another group that's on Airport Street, and we have run-out RVs there. And again, we have a sanitation problem because they're dumping all their human waste into the gutters or the ditches, and we cannot have that. And so we're going to have to figure out some way to deal with that. And it may just be that we start towing them away. But you can't just overnight dealing with either one of those, So I can't just bring in the police and bag them all up, and I just can't do it. It's not ethical. It's not humane. It's not the right thing to do, and they'll go right back there anyway. So I've got to find other places for them to go. And this is not the only community that has that problem. I can tell you that. In Redwood City, we have it. They have it in South San Francisco, have it in San Bruno, have it in Daly City. It is just a growing problem. It's not as bad as San Francisco. We don't have 10 cities. But it's a problem. And by the way, a lot of them work. And they can't afford anything. So that's one of the reasons they're doing what they do. You know, I could tell you that in Pacifica, another part of my district, people rent a space, not in a garage, but in the driveway. They live in a car in the driveway. So here we're the richest county in the state of California. And yet we have this growing, and San Francisco, same thing, same problem. San Francisco's worse because I think a lot of things that they do in the city makes it possible for people to continue living on the street. They provide lots of services. I don't really think it's a good idea for us to bring a lot of service to people who are homeless and say, gee, this is great. Here's some things. We'll give you new clothes. We'll help you with a shower. And then you go back and live in the creek again. All you're doing then is making it possible for them to continue living in the street. Well, we do bring in a thing called a street medicine team because there are people who have significant medical issues. And when we deal with that, we also try to do some outreach and try to get them into housing. So I can get vouchers for people for housing. The problem, I can't find any housing on the coast side. And they have to go over on the bay side and then ultimately probably East Bay or something, so. And then the other issue is foster kids. That's another one of my projects is dealing. We have about 390 children who are in foster care. We have the state has a newer law that we can't, well, they don't want group homes. They want those kids in homes. And so we try to do everything we can to encourage people to take those children in. But sometimes some of the kids have, there's a lot of trauma because they've gone from house to house. And you have to imagine, why are they in foster care? Because they've been abused or because their family can't take care of them. So they start off behind the 8 ball. And so we're it. The county government, we're it. We're their family. We're the ones who are responsible for them. We're the ones who take care of them. And fortunately, we've got in our county, we have a lot of services for those kids, and we get about 80% of them graduate from high school. And what I've been doing with my affordable housing fund is every time we give money to a group like MidPenn or Mercy Housing or Bridge Housing, we want them to have some set aside for foster kids. And I don't want all the foster kids in one building, be like a frat house, but I do want to know where they're at, and I want them to be, taken care of. Now, one thing that we have a system called AB-12 where we actually can give them funding up until the age, I think about 24, for basically for rent if they're going to school. And so we try to get a lot of them into community college, and we've been pretty successful at it. So I think more successful than most counties. And then because this is not exactly yours, but in the coast, I'm switching subjects now, off of my social stuff. By the way, we have 150,000 on Medi-Cal people in the county. That's another, Medi-Cal, you have to be pretty low income to qualify for Medi-Cal. But on the far coast, on Pescadero, we've been working for years on flooding, and I think, we were able to work with a new assembly person to get in the state budget about $4 million for the marsh, because we want to recreate the historic channel for water quality. And we believe that would also probably help with flooding. And we did dredge our section of the roadway. But as you can imagine, it floods every year. Every time it floods, I get a lot of phone calls. You gotta fix this now. So it's we're building fire stations up on. We actually, that's another project I've been working on, replacing all of our engines, all of our fire engines, and those things are expensive, and I think it's well worth it. And when you see these fires in the North Bay and in Southern California, we can have one here. So, I've been really pushing to improve all of our equipment, to add people in the county fire service, and supporting them as best I can in terms of equipment. And so, all their equipment is brand new now. The only thing, I need to get some water tenders replaced, and then we're replacing our stations as well. So that's kind of a overview. I can tell you about traffic in Stanford's Gup, and but you don't need to know about that.
Any update on Marauder Road?
No.
As far as,
No, we did do some temporary resurfacing of the street, so before it was pretty badly pocked. It's gonna get pocked again because the water comes over and the asphalt's gonna deteriorate. But, one of the things that we have to do is we've gotta go through the same thing everybody else does, the Army Corps of Engineers, Monterey Bay Sanctuary, the Gulf of the Farallones, whatever they are too. So we have the same problem. And one of the things that some of the preliminary information we got is they said, well, the reason this is deteriorating is because you have the sand is being washed away. We said, well, that's because you, the Army Corps of Engineers, you built the breakwater that caused all the sand to be trapped and not heading south. And so, anyways, we want that. We do have money set aside for it, but it's probably going to require the original, or the plan that I've seen so far is what's called sheet piling, basically steel. Well, I think it's a coated steel that goes straight down, and you still have to have the RSP, or the rock slope protection. And then all the way down to the bridge, that's going to require nailing under the roadway, and then soldier piles. So that's what it would take.
Yeah, that's really unconsolidated rock through
It
there.
is.
I don't know how much that's gonna be successful. I had heard at one point, Dawn, that the Coastal Commission was saying that if the sheet pile went in, the RSP had to come out. So it sounds like the way you're saying that's changed.
Yeah, because I don't think the sheet piling won't stay up. You can't drive it in deep enough to actually
I wouldn't
make
have
it.
thought so.
Well, that's one of the. They're not engineers, and that's why they would say that you cannot do sheet piling without the RSP.
so
The other reason you want to do it is that because even if you could do it, when you have wave action, the power of the wave is going to bounce off with about the same power, and it's going to cause a lot more erosion further down.
It already does that off
Well,
the
it does
rock,
too.
so
It's
sheet
gonna-
pile would make it worse.
It would
right?
make it much worse. Yeah.
All right, anybody on the council have questions about any of that?
well, just to finish that off, so that's still the plan, and the permitting is sort of underway? Is there or is it sort of stalled out? or- It was gonna be, I guess when we first heard, maybe from a year ago, you were saying that we're gonna do one last fix on this road. And after that, the people will have to come up with some way to do it. The private
Well, that's
property
true.
owners up
Well,
there.
what I was referring to is the fact that if the ocean rises by 3 feet, all bets are off. And at that point, we probably do have to have managed retreat. But in the meantime, we will do our best to fix it, to keep our asset safe. But I cannot guarantee it. If ocean rises, and I think it will, at 3 feet, the rest of the county is not gonna pay for the few homeowners. That's just not gonna happen. Plus, you'd have to have a giant seawall. So it's, the homeowners would probably, maybe, but by the time that happens, there'd be another supervisor, and maybe that other supervisor would have a different view than I. I just think that people have to think about that in the long run. It's not sustainable.
I
Clear?
hope your successors have the same opinion.
Yeah, well, it would be pretty ugly having a giant concrete wall.
Brandon, did you have a question?
Yeah, do you have any more updates on the Princeton street end improvements? Let's see, West Point.
No, Drew, do we have anything else?
Broadway, as you
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
And
Just like
we
such as West Point.
are in the process of looking at the next two street ends,
Uh-huh.
which would be Columbia and Vassar. And Columbia, because it's such a steep drop,
With all the
I think
rocks, yeah.
the first step there is to really do some testing and survey work to get a sense of what are we looking at, you know, what sort of stability or lack of stability is there, what, and that will help to inform what potential designs might be able to be done and what the cost would be to improve access at the end of Columbia. For Vassar, which is the next street, it's fairly more leveled off, and so I think that one, I think DPW is currently working on putting together some plans that will be a little bit more straightforward than Columbia, that we'll be able to move forward with soon, but we'll come back to you with more information when it's ready.
And to go back to Verona Road, what I'll do is I'll check with DPW and I will get back, give you an answer.
Okay.
I haven't talked to him for a while about it.
On the street ends, I hadn't realized that Vassar moved ahead that far. Is DPW also talking to the yacht club, because the yacht club has tentative plans for that area too?
Yeah, we will definitely include the yacht club in preliminary conversations along with the Midcoast Council.
Yeah, we know that they have some ideas about extending their dock.
Yeah, well, there was also some boardwalk ideas as well. Of course,
Yes.
lack of money is a big problem.
It will only
As
cost a
everywhere.
few $1 million.
I think what DPW was thinking for Vassar was something very simple.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I am sure. I just
Yeah.
would like to make sure that it doesn't, makes other possible improvements difficult. Claire?
I'd just like to suggest that, I know you're already doing this, but that we keep in mind that places like Murata Road that are basically very vulnerable, that, we're trying to keep things going as is at this point, but at some point we won't be able to. And it might be good to include in any present planning what the trigger is for changing our plans. So we always have a backup, and it won't be a total crisis when we get to that point.
Yeah, there's a county-wide sea level rise resiliency effort that's already done a lot of analysis and research and data gathering and putting together alternative plans. They sent out an update, I think 3 weeks ago, saying that they had some things for the public to look at. So it's well worth looking at that. And the county and the Bay Area wide effort, the one that's being funded by the whole 9-county tax, is also working on that. So in our area, we've certainly talked about managed retreat as one of the possible answers. And managed retreat is easy to talk about. It's hard to get property owners to agree to it. And so there's obviously huge costs involved.
But we can't let them forget that it may happen.
It is happening.
Yeah, I think the company is doing it, Arcadis, they're doing all the mapping, and they're doing it for San Francisco as well.
Yeah.
I have a question about funding, and don't be alarmed. I just wanted to, in general, as we talk about projects from overcrossings to hawk beacons or whatever it is, I mean, everything is so expensive, and even the applications that were put in for, what was it, $400,000 a piece for the parallel trail in Graywell Cove, didn't get funded, and I know it's come up in the past when we've had meetings in general, and people object to the grant type funding because it has constraints. And what are just in general, what are the funding options that we have? And because I'm concerned that everything we talk about doing is all too expensive. Will any of it actually happen? I mean,
It will. It will happen.
well, I mean,
That's what they're going to trust me. No, it will happen. It will happen. One thing that's going to help us is SB 1. We aren't
which
gonna-
is,
Well, SB 1 is something that the state legislature passed. It's a 12-cent tax on your gasoline. And there's also, there's some other things, vehicle license fees as well. I don't know if it's $35 or whatever. But we will be getting some additional funding for DPW for roadways. And this is, like, the parallel trail is a roadway project.
So that will
So-
just come to DPW, you want to apply for a grant?
No, but I will have to apply for it in the county budget.
Okay.
And on a related subject, this seems like the right place to chime in. County Parks is perennially short of money, and you were talking about Canitas Creek enforcement. So county has enforcement responsibilities for quite a few beaches that they're not really able to cover, near Marauda and a few other areas. And even Fitzgerald, there's been quite a few more violations lately. So we can certainly put an item on our agenda to request more money for county parks for that. But I thought this would be a good point to ask you to see if you can come up with more money for county parks and for the sheriffs, because we have a lot of enforcement problems out here.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, well, it's kind of too early to do much about it, but another supervisor and I have thought about having, that's not the great way to do budgeting, but because parks, anytime there's a downturn, they end up getting cut. We're kind of working on a project that will mandate a certain amount of money for our parks. We've got some of the most magnificent park lands in the Bay Area, and we want to make sure it's protected.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I'm not unaware that that's a problem for us, and I don't like to do ballot box budgeting, but for something like parks, I might be willing to do it. It would have to be something that voters would have to vote on, not a new tax.
No.
Actually, if I was looking for a new tax, I would say fire service. I'd like to see all of our county fire services consolidated, but.
So another important item, so since with all these fires going on, I don't know if you're aware of Proposition 171, which allows the county to freeze the tax base of homeowners whose home was burned out in a declared emergency. I mean, there's only 10 counties in California that currently participates under Proposition 171. I'm not sure if San Mateo County would like to consider it.
So I don't see how I don't see you could tax it if their house burns down. Right, it would be fairly, I would think you would just go to the assessor and say, it doesn't have any value.
Well, this is transferring residents between
Yeah.
counties. It's
Yeah,
like
the
it's
assessment-
like the
the
over
assessment-
55.
assessment. Yeah.
You're taking your tax.
Yeah, base from.
Yeah, we have that already
Right.
in this county. You can take your tax base from someplace else and bring it here.
For the over 55, but this was a case of
For any-
emergency.
Oh, for anybody.
In-
Yeah,
in-
in
if they lose their home, then declare
Emergency.
emergency.
Yeah, by the governor, under Prop 171, and apparently, most of these 10 counties are neighbors such as Santa Clara, San Francisco, Sonoma, LA, Orange County, so, I'm sure
Okay.
you would like to consider, the reason why we don't have an agenda item about that here is because this one's more countywide rather than Midcoast.
So I'll look into that, or I'll actually, if Ellie could take that down, I will look into that and get back to you.
Thank you.
Dan?
Yeah, on the homeless and the affordable housing issue, I was aware of a model up, I think it's up in Oregon somewhere, Eugene area, I think. Essentially, an area that is kind of peppered with tiny homes, tiny houses, and with a center kind of like a
Yeah, I've seen that.
clubhouse, kind of a model to where, just limited sleeping space and kind of sitting space in these tiny homes. And also I think in Oregon, that was a kind of a transition model for giving people basically a place to rest and clean up and go to work, starting a transition period. Also, I think there was a model in Santa Barbara that was similar concept, but a larger building. Actually,
Yeah.
a beautiful building. That was part of the deal to residents allowed the development. So, you know, I don't know where these places could be placed, but it sounds like you have been aware of some of these models, and, you know, what are your thoughts moving forward, you and Supervisor Solcombe, as far as, you know, homeless, you know, you said we have to put homeless somewhere, so can you share, is it too early to share some ideas?
Well, there was a group of citizens from Apple Bay who had this idea about tiny houses, and they want to put on Eiffeltoren in Moss Beach.
Yeah.
And I said, if you do that in Moss Beach, they'll be burning me in effigy. There's no way that I could support that. Plus, the other thing is, how do you deal with the sanitation issues and the zoning issues? There's really not. See, Oregon's a little different than us. Is that you have a big state with not a lot of people, and you probably could find a site like that. But I don't. If there was a site that you could do something like that, I'll guarantee it's taken up by somebody else. Property here is really valuable, and there aren't sites like that. And I think it's kind of it's an interesting idea about tiny houses, but you know, we're just a really congested area. There's really not a lot of space for it. There's another group that was interested in putting tiny houses up at what used to be the old honor camp in La Honda, but there's only one road in and out. And it's in the middle of a
long road.
It's a long road in and out, and there's we used to keep about 200 prisoners there at one time. It was a Boy Scout camp in the 60s, and in any case, I worked there as a deputy. It was great because I used to wander all over the woods and hike all over the place. It was a great place to hike and stuff. But our water rights actually expired, so there's really no water. And then the problems you have with sanitation. And we did it one time in the 70s, had a big sanitation plant, but it wouldn't meet standards anymore. So in that case, there was a proposal to put tiny houses there for people who were mentally ill. You can't do that, because what happens if something in the middle of the night, you have to go to the hospital. You got one road, and it's in really bad shape. It takes you at least an hour to get to Redwood City. Just can't, it's not feasible. So we have never found this place where you could put tiny houses. It's not a bad idea. And most of the tiny houses that you see are kind of people who like living off the grid. It may be great in Oregon, but and I know a lot of people have approached us about it, but I've just not found any place that's a suitable site for it.
Yeah, space is an issue.
Space is a real issue.
There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, quick interruption. So the housing you were talking about earlier over in Redwood City is essentially a large apartment building.
Well, one of the things, we had an old jail, and it used to be the women's jail. We wanted to tear it down, but our property there's we were going to do some extensive remodeling and tear down the old jail and build what we call an opportunity center for people who are chronically homeless, and hopefully get them stabilized. But then the city of Redwood City wants to develop it because it's right by the slough. It's by the water basically, and it's kind of, I guess, you got a lot of houseboats and stuff, and they want to get rid of the houseboats now, and they want to build, condominiums there. So we said, fine, we'll move our homeless shelter. It's about 2 acres, but we want to go over to this area over here. That's 4 acres, and we want you to give us the 4 acres. So, and our reason is, wait a second, our property is way more valuable than your property. Not only that, we put our jail someplace over called Chemical Way, and it wasn't called Chemical Way for nothing, and it cost us more money than we needed to because you didn't want our jail in your downtown area, so so in other words, we're basically trying to get a better deal with the city of Redwood City and move into a 4 acre versus a 2 acre site, so we can move the whole homeless shelter there and put an opportunity center so that we could have housing for more permanent people who are more chronically homeless. By the way, we don't really, you know, we've done a lot of things with, to try and get people into housing. So we have a Housing Heroes Award for people who have, you know, apartment buildings who will take people, our clients basically, who have whatever their problem is, mental health, substance abuse, whatever. We actually pay the landlord $1,000 bonus, and then with a Section 8 voucher, they get you're guaranteed all the money. If anything goes wrong, we guarantee we'll fix it. If they put a hole in the wall, we'll fix it. If we have to evict them, we'll take care of it. So we do everything we can to get people to use those vouchers to get us. And we do have the vouchers. We could put a lot of people in housing. Problem is to get people, you know, to take our clients. Now, the people who do take them tend to be the mom and pop operations, like the big corporations that have big buildings. You cannot deal with them. They won't deal with us. And you can't do anything about rent control with them either, because they are built after 1995, and you are precluded by law from imposing rent control on those buildings. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm sure you're aware of this. You know, one of the benefits of the tiny homes are that they're extremely mobile. And we know that, you know, moving forward, 20 years ahead, there's going to be a lot of redevelopment in the county, El Camino Real, different areas, and you know, there's overlaps of periods, permitting and designing, and where there's places that sit vacant or unused, and I know that those windows are probably shrinking and shrinking, never, but yeah, I know it's an added complication, but there may be opportunities to have a small little model here and a small, and just even if it's short term for a year or so.
You have a good point. You know, about in terms of development. If you go up, I don't know how much time you guys spend over on the Bayside, but every city on the Bayside is seeing massive development. And San Carlos, Redwood City, Belmont's now starting. There's massive amounts all up and down. The El Camino is what do they call it? The Grand Boulevard Initiative, going for all the way from Daly City all the way down. Even Portola Valley is looking at affordable housing. One of the reasons they have in Portola Valley, they can't get teachers now. There is a private school, they're building housing on their campus, and they can do it because it's a private school, and all they do is just charge people more money to send their kids to school. But the city, like Portola Valley's having a tough time. Even their city manager can't live in their town, so they're thinking about, gee, we can't, you know, they offered somebody a job as their finance director, and she came and looked around the area and said, hey, I can't live here. See you later, find somebody else. So every city, the only one that isn't doing anything is three of them. There's Atherton, Hillsborough, and Woodside. The only ones that are not doing anything with housing. Everybody else is, every city is dealing with housing. Now, some might say, you know, stop all the development. How do you tell companies to go away? If I could, I'd love to see Facebook go to San Leandro. Take your 25,000 people over there. But they don't do that. They're all Stanford people, and they don't go to San Leandro. They came here. And the biotech, you know, the San Francisco says, you know, Mission Bay, oh, we have all this biotech. You know what? They have nothing. The biggest biotech center in the world is South San Francisco. Not just in California, not just in the Bay Area, in the world is South San Francisco. So what happens is when you have that kind of synergy, you know, the companies, they don't go to, you know, Crescent City. They go here. They can't go to Mission Bay because there's not a lot of room. So the Warriors are going to be there. So it's just the fact of life is that this county is going to get up to about 900,000 people.
I guess,
State of California's over 40, is about 40 million.
I guess the only
You
pushback,
know what, we're the sixth largest, the state's the sixth largest economy in the world. And you know what the 21st largest economy in the world is? San Francisco Bay Area.
yeah, I guess the only pushback
Well,
is
there's
the
a
traffic.
That's right.
I have witnessed all 4 or 5 lanes on 280 southbound at a dead stop at 6:30 a.m.
Well,
in the
you
morning.
try, you know, one of the reasons I really love district elections, I no longer have to go on 101 up and down the freeway to go to Burlingame. Because it takes, to go from Redwood City to like Burlingame's an hour on that freeway, and it is, you know, and everybody's just aggressive drivers now. It's tough.
Beam me up, Scotty.
Chris, did you have anything?
No.
Frank?
So, speaking of elections, so like you said, you or someone else said, like, there was gonna be this committee that's gonna review, the charter for the county, regarding, all these elected positions. I don't even understand why a coroner is an elected, official here. I don't know what difference one coroner would make.
Well, I don't, we're actually not, we're not really studying what we are due by ordinance to change the qualifications. And if we don't want it to be just 18 years of age and a U.S. citizen. They should have some knowledge of forensics. Well, you know, it's probably not likely that we'll get a doctor to do it, but, you know, doctors do the pathology, but they don't do, you know, it's hard to get, what doctor's gonna want to run for office, so. It's, Americans love elections. We all do. You know, we have all these elected, we have elected controller. There's a control, the controller, we're suggesting that the controller and tax collector should be appointed. And our reasoning was that, how does the citizen make a differentiation between two people? One person says, I'm the controller, and the other one says, I'll control it better than she'll control it. Or the tax collector, I'll collect the taxes better than he'll collect the taxes. It's not a policy decision, it's really kind of
Another thing is that the county clerk is the same thing as the assessor recorder. I would suggest separating because it's kind of unrelated, you know, in a way, like dealing with elections and, you know.
So, some people have thought on our board that we should that the assessor shouldn't control elections, that ought to be controlled by the county. I don't think the voters would allow us to do that, because they would think, people don't like politicians. They like elections, but they don't like politicians. And so if we control the election department, I don't think they'd like that. They would say, oh no, you guys could mess it up.
All right, anything else? Any questions from anybody in the audience? All right. Thank you very much, Don.
Thanks. That was a long talk, 1 hour.
That was good.
There's a lot to go.
Thanks.
We could keep going for another half hour, I'm sure. We appreciate your making the time. All right, in that case, I'm going to close that particular agenda item 4A, and we'll move on to the next item on our regular agenda, which is a presentation on pedestrian hybrid beacons, the Hawk system for traffic and crosswalk control. And Ellie Dahlman will present that. I will project it if I can get it right. Dan, can I ask you to hit the button on the projector for me?
All right, good evening, Midcoast Community Council, Midcoast community members. My name is Ellie Dahlman. I'm here with Office of Supervisor Horsley. And my goal today through this presentation is, if you aren't already, my goal is to help you become an expert on pedestrian hybrid beacons, or PHBs, formerly known as Hawk signals. So is anybody familiar with pedestrian hybrid beacon systems, or has anybody used one before? Okay, so we have a few people. Kind of a fun fact, this PHB model was originally developed in Tucson, Arizona in the 90s. And if you could just go to the next slide for me. It's a special type of beacon used to warn and control traffic at an unsignalized location to assist pedestrians in crossing a street or highway at a marked crosswalk. So it's a little bit tough to see here, but there is a marked crosswalk underneath. Some of the key elements of the PHB signal include overhead lighted beacon with 3 lights on it, and sometimes an overhead sign labeled crosswalk, stop on red. It also includes a marked crosswalk and a pedestrian signal countdown. So when you're the pedestrian, you press the button, you wait for the signal that tells you to walk, and it counts down how much time you have to walk. And so those are the key elements, and this image here is just an example of a pedestrian hybrid beacon. The light fixtures are kind of on an arm that's held directly above the lanes of travel for the vehicles. And if you'll go to the next slide for me, this is just walking you through what happens to the signals, which are facing the cars, when the pedestrian activates the button when they're ready to cross the street. So when there's no pedestrian activating the button, the 3 signals stay dark. They're not lit up. But as soon as I come up and press the button, the first thing that happens is a yellow flashing light on the bottom signal for, maybe, I think it says 3 to 6 seconds. And then the next thing that will happen is that flashing yellow light will go solid yellow. And that will stay for a few seconds until there is 2 solid red lights. So sort of similar to a traffic signal as it goes from green to yellow to red. It'll go from yellow to then 2 solid red lights, which will signal to the driver to stop. And so that will last for a few seconds, depending on the width of the roadway. There are specific calculations for how long it must be red for the pedestrian to reach one side to the other. And then after that, the solid red lights will then turn into 2 flashing red lights until it then goes dark. And so that's kind of the sequence of the lights when the signal is activated.
And the flashing red lights have the standard meaning. They're exactly like a stop sign. Stop and then go.
And if you'll go to the next slide, I have a short video just to kind of show us an example, and then talk us through this similar process that I just talked about.
We are at the intersection of McClintock and the Western Canal, and we're down here to talk about the new HAWK signal, a high-intensity activated crosswalk. We have a brand new multi-use path here at the Western Canal, which is halfway between Guadalupe and Elliott. And the crossings are at Rule and McClintock. They're very busy crossings, and so we wanted to add a device that would help the pedestrians get across in a more efficient manner, and also help move traffic in a safe and efficient way. It's very busy roads. There's lots of pedestrian usage, bicycle usage, people on rollerblades and skateboards, and so they were having a hard time finding an acceptable gap of traffic to get across the road safely. And the HAWK pedestrian beacons provide that gap of traffic for them. The pedestrians can expect when they come up to the HAWK signal a very similar setup to a normal traffic signal. They need to push the pedestrian button to activate it, and they're going to see a solid don't walk hand. And when that turns to walk, they'll know that it's their time to be able to proceed across the intersection, and they should carefully go out into traffic looking for oncoming vehicles when the walk signal comes on. And then it will go to the flashing red hand, the don't walk hand. They should complete their crossing, but not start a crossing at that time. And then it's going to go back to the solid don't walk hand until a pedestrian comes and pushes the button again. Although the HAWK beacon signal is very similar from a pedestrian perspective to normal traffic signals, the motorists are going to see very different situations. First of all, it starts out dark, and so there's nothing going on until a pedestrian presses the button. Now, once the pedestrian presses the button, the signal will start flashing yellow, telling the motorist to prepare to stop, and then it will go to solid yellow, telling the motorist they must come to a stop, and then it's going to go to a solid red. Once the solid red is finished, that's the walk time for the pedestrian. It's going to toggle red back and forth. And toggling red back and forth means once you stop and the pedestrian is cleared, you can proceed through the intersection. If you're the second person in line, you pull up to the stop bar and make sure it's clear and the pedestrian is across, and then you may proceed through. And then once the signal goes dark, you can proceed through the signal like you would if there was no pedestrians at all. And this way it's more efficient for traffic, and that's the benefit of the hawk over.
All right, so that was actually a different video than I had anticipated, but it
Sorry
said
about
the
that.
exact same thing. That was just yet another explanation kind of with the action of the hawk, or PHB, pedestrian hybrid beacon system. And so I guess really the reason that I'm coming to you with this information is, as we discussed, or during my presentation to you a few meetings ago, it came up that during a recent meeting with Caltrans about the Graywell Cove project, there were serious concerns from one of the traffic experts around creating a false sense of safety for the pedestrian by painting a crosswalk, making them feel like they're in a safe space without actually having the proper lighting and kind of notification to the oncoming high-speed traffic. You know, if it's nighttime, even lower visibility than there already is with the tight corners. And then in addition, if there's the cases when it's foggy, that adds an additional element. So the county is in agreement with the traffic expert around the concerns about creating a false sense of safety, which is the reason that we will be moving forward with the pedestrian hybrid beacon alternative for the Graywell Cove location. The PHB helps to increase visibility for the drivers around the tight corners by providing a signal lighting directly above the travel lane versus on either side of the highway. It helps at night and in the fog. So I also, if you have, just go to the next slide. I also wanted to bring a bit of additional information. A question came up at the last meeting, or a couple meetings ago, about the alternative of above or below grade crossings for Graywell Cove. And so I just did a little bit of research to find some information. So in the CCAG Comprehensive Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan, the estimated cost in 2011 dollars for an above or below grade crossing was quoted at between $10 million and $12 million, and that's just for construction. It would not include design. So the second bullet there just goes over also the fact that the funding that the county was granted for the preliminary planning study and that is being used for the Graywell Cove design and to cover part of the construction is highway funding from the Transportation Authority, and it kind of got cut off there, but the above and below grade crossings are not eligible for the funding that we've been granted to do this work. And so between the high cost of such an improvement, and because the limited amount of funding that we do have in hand, because those don't fit with the below or above grade crossing, in addition to the fact that the footprint of the project for an above or below grade crossing would be much, much larger, requiring additional environmental mitigation, which would also add to the cost. That I think this is, I'm trying to provide reasoning to help you all understand how the determination for the current alternative improvement for the at-grade crossing was determined at this point in time. And so that's all I have for my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions or clarifications you have.
Could I have any of you seen any of that? Have you seen one of these things? They're all over the place in the county now. And they're on El Camino, a lot on El Camino. We've had a lot of pedestrian fatalities on El Camino. That's when these things were put in. And I don't think we've had any fatalities since.
But are there any, I mean, that's Tucson, it's the city of.
I'm not sure what city this is actually. This was one of the
The
first
video was
images.
Tucson. I actually showed the wrong video, but
That's definitely Arizona somewhere, either Tucson or Phoenix.
Well, that's where they usually come from.
Tempe.
Yeah.
Phoenix area. Well, my point is, these are major metropolitan areas. El Camino's a metropolitan area. I mean, these are above grade lighting fixtures that are gonna flash and degrade the visual scenery. I'm not sure that they are rural solutions. I mean, how many of those are in rural to semi-rural areas of the county?
Well, and what I will say is that we are working on Highway 1, which is Caltrans jurisdiction, and so it's literally, you know, their rules or their way or the highway, if one will. And so while, you know, we would really like to implement, you know, something that's more rural in nature, I think in this case, you know, with over 60,000 people crossing at this location each year, this is really what the solution that Caltrans is using to avoid creating the false sense of safety for people who are crossing highways with high speeds. And
remember, it is dark when nobody has pressed the button in the last few minutes. Except for, I want to remind people, the light over the top. With the light over the top, the regular highway street light will be required for a crosswalk across Highway 1, no matter what else was there.
So in that area now, we're gonna have a street light that's 40 feet up, 50 feet high.
Probably 30 something.
I know we've been through this before, and I would just say again that if we're talking, now we're talking numbers, 60,000 people. I mean, when do the numbers become such that the investment in what is the only real solution for that place, when do we make that investment? We're gonna invest in this, more people are gonna come, more traffic, more people crossing. At some point, we're gonna do what the city of Santa Barbara did. They kicked the can down the road for decades and eventually bit the bullet and had to build bridges over the freeway because Highway 101 went through. Eventually, this is not gonna work anymore. And, you know, in 20 years, when we go to build the above grade crossing, it's gonna cost $40 million.
But you're probably right, because you look at a lot of clover leaves now that were built and they're now taking them out and doing stuff different. So the future will change things, and that'll happen. And, you know, a bridge over there isn't gonna look any prettier than that.
Well, I disagree. You can, you know, the design of the bridge
Well,
could be,
you
there's
could.
many different designs. I've been many places and
You
seen
could.
some amazing.
You could put it
As Palo
underground
Alto
too.
just found out, anything that's more than just basically functional doubles the cost.
Or couldn't you control?
Hold on a second, Dan's next.
Very respectfully, don't want to shoot, I know you're the messenger, don't want to shoot the messenger. But you know, these were brought up, how many years ago was that? 3, 4 years ago in the Fair Lawn View School, and, you know, there was intense community objection to the hawk lights for a number of reasons. You know, the video didn't show cars backed up for miles as a result of these on our highway, on 1. You know, I wanted to say, you know, for maybe a interim kind of use. I know some areas are using you grab a flag and you walk across, and it's successful in certain areas. But back to the the cost of the tunnel, there's a natural dip between the existing Graywell parking lot and the funny structure, the old. There's a natural dip. What could be done easily, in my opinion, scratch down 3 feet, place 2 precast concrete boxes. Now you have a tunnel right next to the staircase down to the Graywell Cove. It's right there, right at that low point. Cut into the side, little retaining wall. You now have a gradual handicap ramp from the parking lot all the way down to that dip. Easily cross in underneath the road. Well under $12 million. I would guess that something like that would cost $3 million. What is safety worth? That's what we have to ask our community.
But Dan, that's not the agenda item. We can't discuss this on this agenda.
And I would just
It's
add.
okay to raise the issue, but we can't discuss it.
I would just add, I would encourage you to bring your concerns and desire for a large investment in safety at Graywell Cove to Caltrans. In this case, the county has really taken initiative to apply for funding, secure funding, develop preliminary planning study to initiate and lead the design phase for a safety improvement to improve the safety of the existing Graywell Cove non-existent crosswalk. And so, really at this moment in time, the county is going above and beyond to improve access and safety at this location. And in the future, as Supervisor Horsley said, if there is additional funding and if Caltrans is willing to initiate that and to move that forward, that would be great.
And if anybody wants to work on that, I can put them in touch with the people at the Santa Cruz Land Trust. They're working on an equivalent thing for wildlife undercrossing on the Laurel Curve. It's a big deal, but
Put me
put you in
on
touch
that.
with those people.
Yes, thank you.
This council, the majority of this council did vote to approve that grant application. We were only seeking to beef up the median refuge concept, but we were on board with the plan. What you're describing is when Dave and I attended that meeting at Caltrans, and the woman brought up this hawk instead of the flashing beacons, which the county had planned. That's within the range of what the majority of this council voted for. Having been there at Caltrans meeting, and that phalanx of faces, unknown job titles, whatever, just, I sympathize. I understand it now. When you come and say, it's their highway, what are we gonna do? I get it now. You go,
And they were actually fairly sympathetic for a Caltrans meeting, I'll point out.
so, I think the last point you made on the last piece of text where it got cut off, where you said this grant, we got this grant back in 2012 that we've been working on for crossings, and it's proceeded to the point where the remainder is going for Graywell Cove, and you're saying that funding cannot be used. All the work that's happened on this, the money spent on design, cannot be used for an overcrossing. So at this point, there's no going back, in my opinion.
For this project, right.
For this project, yes, and as far as the majority of the council is on board with it. If we agendize, I don't see having an agenda item at this point to reassess that until the county now knows, go all the way back and start this over. I don't see that happening.
No, it would be the start of a second project, long-term project.
And the last thing that I'll just add, in working with Caltrans and meeting with them, they have agreed to implement the construction phase and be the lead agency in that phase, as long as, and we did agree that the county would provide the funding for that So, they are helping in the development, but it really has been the county's push and initiative to get the designs completed and to secure funding to improve the safety at this location, at least by a smidgen, a notch in the right direction.
It's clear that without this effort, there would be nothing happening in Graywell Cove. It would stay as far as if it were up to Caltrans. Just as at the lighthouse, after we finished up the safety and mobility study with all these beautiful concept plans for that location, for a refuge island and a crossing, and no sooner did we, even before it was approved by the board, Caltrans moved in, completely unannounced, no permits whatever, and widened it and put it in that two-way center turn lane, did the whole thing, and put no crosswalk. So it's their highway, and that's what they did. And so it's tough, I understand.
All right. Any other questions or comments from the council?
Yeah, just, I know that Caltrans created an animated visual of what the traffic would look like during the construction of the new bridge in Pacifica on Highway 1. I was at the meeting, I saw the video, I saw the animation. It shows clearly how the cars would back up and stop and wait and blah, blah, blah. So I think I asked, I think you agreed, Don, a few months ago, 4 months ago, that we could do something similar, so we could actually, with all the correct data, input it into the program, the application, that we could actually see visually what this would turn our highway into as far as traffic backup. So I would encourage that would be done sooner than later in the process.
Yeah, I know the consultant has, I think over Thanksgiving or around that time, did begin gathering traffic data. So I can check back with them to see, it's Caltrans that has the simulation that the information could be input to?
They presented the model, so we may have had a contractor develop it.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? I guess I can ask a question. Can I ask a question? With those blocks, as I understand it, as the pedestrians going through, the red lights flashing, once they're through, they can go.
Right. The vehicles can continue on
that's
their way.
That's one of the reasons it doesn't, it's not like a red light. The flashing light, you stop, it starts flashing, and then once the pedestrians pass you, you go. And so that's why it doesn't they don't back up like a traffic signal.
Like at Capistrano and Frenchman's Creek, when pedestrians push that button and they cross and they're halfway down to the beach, and the people are still waiting for the light to change. So that wouldn't happen.
This is not the same as that. So that.
The intervals are tunable.
But respectfully, the flaw is that currently people wait, and as they're waiting, more people gather. So we're not crossing one person at a time.
Right, Dan, these can be tuned so they don't go more than every few minutes.
So with this model, theoretically, one person can stop traffic on Highway 1 for a moment, cross, while another person comes up.
Right under state law, that is the current situation with nothing there. Cars are required to stop for pedestrian crosses, period, full stop.
Right, but practically that's not what happens.
It does happen. It's not a change.
Don't we add a motion sensor to?
No, it's a button. So what happens is, you press the button, it's just like on any busy intersection. You press the walk button, it doesn't change to green for you that instant. There's a delay. And the more traffic there is, and the more disruptive it is, the longer delay before the light changes. So it's tunable, it's all computer-based. They can come out and change it, actually, and change it remotely these days over Wi-Fi. So we can tune it to see what happens. And the simulations will tell you something about that. But as we saw at the bridge in Pacifica, simulations are not always perfect. But yeah, we can ask for Anything else? Anybody from the audience have a question? Yeah.
Can you go back to the structure, we're looking at the hawk structure?
Sure.
Are there any choices, we're talking about you could make a nice overpass or an ugly overpass. Are there any choices in terms of that structure? Like a different color, anodized, dark, or timber, or?
Yeah, that's a great question. I can go back to our consultants to find out if there are different models or what what room for kind of fine tuning the hawk system to the specific location. I think I'll also add, again, we are on Caltrans Highway, Highway 1, and so really ultimately, we'll find out if there are options, and we'll bring those options, I think, to you all for input, but ultimately to Caltrans, and it will be up to them really what they would allow within their standards.
Absolutely. And Neil, to be clear, are you asking about like paint or powder coat on the zinc?
Yeah.
Caltrans in general is very resistant to that from a maintenance perspective, and we got powder coated fence up on the double slide because we were all worried about the plastic just flaking off and blowing into the ocean. We've seen the powder coat is doing the same thing. It lasts longer than plastic. So there really isn't much better of anything than just plain heavy zinc coating for these things. And so we'll ask, but Caltrans is very resistant to anything that increases maintenance problems. Sure, Marcia?
How about the visibility on the curve on Grayville Cove? You're coming down, there's that curve, and people barrel down that, and then all of a sudden there's a little yellow light going, well, you better stop because there's pedestrians. It's that the visibility on that curve.
So part of developing the more detailed designs will be looking at really where is what you might call the sweet spot in the area of the parking lot and the beach entrance across the way. Where is the best place to put the crosswalk that would allow for the highest possible visibility from, I think especially from the north end where it's the, kind of tougher, but also keeping in mind the south end, where's the best place we can put it while still, keeping it in the general area of, where the pedestrians are going to be walking. So that will be looked at absolutely in terms of ensuring that we are directing people to the safest possible space to make that trek across the highway.
Anything else?
As far as the aesthetics about the hawk thing and all, I would imagine, there was a good deal of discussion about aesthetics at the south portal as far as the lights and all that, and so I would imagine if you see what that looks like, that we ask for that extra attention, that's what you'll get at Graywell Cove. They're being so close.
I would imagine so. All right. Thank you, Ellen.
I have a comment on this.
Oh,
Another
sure.
person for the comments.
Sure, come on up.
Bill Keogh, Moss Beach, and I'm glad Neil is here because I'm trying to remember how many decades ago were we on the Midcoast Council when we started the whole safe crossing thing, and the objective was to get a safe crossing at California. And I bring this up every time because while it's dangerous to cross at Graywell Cove, it is just as dangerous to cross at California. And the sad part about this is I don't care how many visitors come here, 60,000, 600,000, the residents who have been going through this for more than a decade wanted a safe crossing in the community. So, we didn't get it.
Yeah, and I guess the one thing that I will add in response to that question is, we are very aware there are many locations along Highway 1 in need of pedestrian improvements for safety access. And I think in the case of Graywell Cove, due to the limited amount of funding remaining in the grant that we received, and due to the desire to actually have an improvement in the ground so that people can use it, that was, I think, part of the reason why we're moving forward with Graywell Cove as part of this phase for the improvement.
That's it. That's it.
All right, thank you, Ellie.
Thank you very much, Ellie. All right, I'm sorry, I'm trying to get my agenda back here. You got it. Thank you very much. All right, so we're on to council activity, correspondence, meetings. Lisa?
So I attended the planning commission today. The item was the mobile home park ordinance amendment, providing for in the coastal zone, reduced building height to 28 feet, and this key phrase defining how you measure building height. The height of structures in all areas zoned blank shall be measured from the lower of natural or finished grade to the topmost point of the building immediately above. One simple sentence. It was included in the second unit ordinance earlier this year. And if there is no sentence defining building height in each ordinance, the county defaults to this complicated averaging method, which doesn't even consider how much fill you put under the building. It goes from finished grade. And we didn't even realize, so with the LCP update in 2012, reduced the building height in the last of the zoning districts to 28 feet. It was the resource management, planned ag development, and the neighborhood commercial, reduced them to 20 feet. Neglected to put this defining sentence in there. We didn't even realize until we saw the Valmar Bluff houses and design review even. It was like, well, what's this? Is this a different zoning? And the design review committee can try and make the building looks shorter, but there it is, and we don't even know how high the two houses on the south are sitting on over 1,000 cubic yards of fill. We don't even know what that height is. They just measured from finished grade. And as we saw, this other method takes what is a 28-foot height limit, and you get you a 36-foot high house looking at it from the, anyway, so same thing with neighborhood commercial in Montera. And so we had asked last spring, get the neighborhood commercial updated. Planning department's too busy. Then when we saw this amendment put through on the mobile home park ordinance, which was described at the meeting today as very minor. It's a very minor amendment. And they approved it. And so we had written a couple months ago, we wrote to you and Steve about getting this one sentence added to these other 3 zoning districts. And this very minor amendment. The District 3 Planning Commissioner, Zoe Kirsten-Tucker, was supportive, said this would be a quick fix. But Steve Monowitz said, once again, the work plan is full, and he seemed to think it would take a lot of time. I don't know. Anyway, he said that they could consider it when they come with a work plan next year, and the tone was that something else would have to go if they shifted the priority. Some other important thing would have to go down the list. Like, so it doesn't look good. I don't know where we want to proceed from here. I don't know if there's.
You want to look into it, get back to you?
Yeah.
Okay. Could you send me the memo again?
Okay.
Yeah, now we can lift the wording from this amendment, and hopefully that makes it much easier.
Yeah, it was the same thing in our letter. I pulled it out of the second unit ordinance. But now we've seen this process happen. And the other thing is, you can only submit so many amendments to the Coastal Commission per year. And but if it's a minor amendment, I mean, that doesn't even go on their agenda, it goes in the director's report. And,
Well, it
this,
could be one amendment for all the zoning.
yeah, I would think. So I don't know why Steve considers this complicated and time-consuming. I don't understand it really. Maybe further clarification or some plan of.
Another budget request item, more staff building and planning so that they can get through these things.
Yeah, I mean, the pattern's right there in the mobile home ordinance, and you just have, just putting in one sentence. We're not lowering the building height or anything, we're just putting in a definition, is all. And it's too bad it didn't get done before the Valamar Bluff project came to us, but, with the economy the way it is, things are starting to really jump. And it takes time. Okay, that's all I have. Sorry it took so long.
No problem. Barbara, do you have anything you want to report?
Maybe I'll have him come and explain it.
Okay. Brandon, do you have anything you want to report? Claire?
Some of us were at the Charles,
Charles Lester?
yeah, his presentation, which was very interesting about the history of protection of, I'm actually not feeling very well, but you know what it was about. You could fill in for me.
Yeah, it was a great meeting. Committee for Green Foothills, the Sierra Club, and Surf Riders co-sponsored it. He went through a amazingly complete, in about an hour and 10-minute summary of the whole Prop 20 and the way it's been implemented and the effects and places where it's worked well and places where it hasn't worked well. Tie in with sea level rise and erosion, including a number of local areas where we've had problems, Pacifica, down south of Surfers Beach, a few other areas. If he ever speaks again, it's well worth going to. And I will remind people he is a consultant to Half Moon Bay on their LCP and LUP and general plan updates, and he's had a lot of their meetings. And the video of the meeting where he gave a similar summary, very specific to Half Moon Bay, is now on the Half Moon Bay website if you want to watch that. Dan, anything you want to report on? Chris?
Yes, on Thursday, December 7th, I attended the San Mateo County Parks Commission meeting. Neil was there as well. And at that meeting, myself and several other people from the Dog Management Committee presented our case for our set of policies, policy guidelines. And I'm happy to announce that the Parks Commission unanimously voted to recommend those policies to the Board of Supervisors. So it will come to you at some point in the future. And that committee was put together to look at developing policies to change the ordinance, which now says no domestic animals of any kind in San Mateo County Park, except for a few properties where it has been grandfathered in, like Corey Park. So you can't bring your chickens or your rabbits either. But we're looking at, right? And this is only for dogs. So, but maybe the policy will say domestic animals, but our policy only focused on dogs. But I am happy to say that the Parks Commission did vote to recommend that set of policies.
One last thing I forgot to mention is that Caltrans District 4 is currently in the process of updating their bicycle plan, which would include identifying and prioritizing investments to improve bicycling on and across state-owned transportation networks, which would include crosswalks, possibly at California. So comments are due by December 22nd, so I encourage you to, they have a tool, online tool map where you can go on and provide your input through their website. I just kind of Googled Caltrans District 4 bicycle plan, but that's another place to submit your input regarding much needed safety improvements, specifically for bicycle and pedestrian crossing Highway 1 in this case.
So the deadline is December 22nd of this year?
Yes, it is.
So this is an online survey? Will you send us the link?
Yes, I can do that.
Everybody fill out from Lindemar to Montero. major bicycle safety lane along Highway 1. Major. You're just waiting for somebody to slap.
Really?
That's horrible.
On that,
Yeah.
I know, I ride it maybe twice a year for that reason. You saw somebody get hit?
No, I said, I have not.
Yeah, sooner or later.
We've been lucky.
Yeah.
We've been very lucky. So I attended a couple meetings. I attended the November 14th Planning Commission meeting in Half Moon Bay. It was pretty much completely dedicated to the land use planning. Again, Dr. Charles Lester spoke quite a bit. What this was, is this was sort of the wrap up of all the stuff that's been happening for 18 months, presenting it to the Planning Commission, saying, this is what we have, these are areas where we can change things. We're looking for whether what we've got is what you're looking for, you want something different. By and large, which was good, the Planning Commission liked what was there, and a few suggestions for changes and more information. So that will keep going. I don't know if it will be delayed by the change in the city manager or not, probably not. And so that will then go to the Planning Commission, and we will then pass it on to the Half Moon Bay City Council. I also watched my video, the Half Moon Bay City Council meeting that Harvey mentioned earlier, 3.5 hours long, with many people speaking about their concerns for and against, primarily against. Seems like the people that are against speak more. Cannabis growing. So that was interesting. If you want to know what at least some people think, it's worth watching. It's online. I've also been attending, thanks to Dawn, a set of strategy meetings on getting more money for transportation in San Mateo County. Samtrans is the lead agency. They've come up with the first set of ideas. They have an online survey at getusmovingsmc.com. I highly recommend that anybody who has any ideas or concerns whatsoever about transit, transportation, highway widening, pedestrian, bicycle, take a look at it. I had thought about trying to get somebody in the county to do something for the coast here under that, but when I looked at how far along they were on everything, I realized there wasn't enough time for us to do anything. But I will certainly put in the word that we need more bus transit here, particularly express bus service up to Clark. That's
actually, just to interject that they have had a couple of meetings, one in Pacific and one here, and I've been pushing too, but not mostly not up and down buses. What I wanted was express buses. With an express bus would be no more than 4 stops and going essentially a couple of places on the coast side, and maybe go to Caltrain in one place or Park or the other, and that's it.
Yes, it was, unfortunately, the transit meetings that Samtrans themselves held out here were relatively poorly attended, but
true.
Both online and at the meetings, that was the thing that got asked for more than anything else. And then I wanted to mention that tomorrow night there's a meeting here in the same room, GCSD. On the agenda are proposals for a park on the Burnham Strip. There's a discussion of rate changes for Recology, so any of the GCSD folks watching this on video, you have a small chance to put in your word on that. And there was one other thing I thought people should know. Whether they will renew their lease on this space. So if you have opinions on that. That's it for me. So we will move on to the next agenda.
I have a couple things to add.
Oh, sorry.
So I also attended that Charles Lester meeting at Greenfield Hills, and I was enthralled. I asked for, trying to get a PDF to post. I don't know if I'll be able to get that or not, but the stuff we commented on Arbor Lane and Valamar Bluff and all along here, I mean, it's just pictures there, and ideas there and things we should be saying and what the comment he made, you know, how we have now this, boilerplate that we're asking any blacktop development to have these, deed restrictions. And it's the same thing the Coastal Commission has been applying. He spoke about that a bit. He said they've been applying that to all, shoreline development for about 20 years now, and it hasn't really been tested in court yet, so not really sure how solid that is, but it was interesting to know their background. I mean, pardon?
Well, I think that Martin's Beach, if I'm not mistaken, if that gets into federal court, they're gonna try and, I think, invalidate the coastline.
Yes, yes.
Yep.
So we hope it doesn't.
All right, so, that finishes council activity. Future agendas. I want to remind people that the next December meeting, 2 days after Christmas, is canceled, as we do almost every year. We also have traditionally the council retreat in January, and I had suggested, I believe it was the 19th or the 26th, Saturday mornings. Do the council members want to propose a date? And Dawn, I don't know if you'll be able to make it or not. I'll certainly invite you.
I would make it, as long as you have the coffee and
Coffee,
donuts, right.
yeah.
Our former police officer.
That's right.
Okay,
If you have
so-
coffee and donuts, I'll be here.
So a straw poll, how many people would prefer, and I'll point out that the 19th is in between two MCC, I'm sorry, I had that wrong. Calendar's gone. One of those 2 dates is in between two MCC meetings, and one is a week away. So, does anybody prefer the 19th?
What was the other date, the
The
26th?
26th.
So both Fridays?
They're both Saturday. Did I give the date wrong again?
Yeah, the 20th and the 27th are,
Yes, it's the 20th or the 27th, sorry about that.
Let me just say first, any day you pick is fine with me.
Okay, that helps.
So the 27th is after the second MCC meeting, correct?
Right, yeah. Do I hear any votes for the,
The 27th.
you like the 27th?
So is Dawn.
So it is Dawn, okay, that's good. Anybody else not able to make the 27th of January? As far as you know at this moment, we're not asking for it. Okay. All right, then we will tentatively schedule that for the 27th. I will put it in the notes.
What time do we say, start time?
I'm thinking like 9:30. It'd be nice to be out by noon. The last time when we went 4.5 hours, I think it was, we were all exhausted. By the end of it, it was not productive.
Last year's retreat, Dawn wasn't there, and I don't think we had a county council either.
Right, we did not.
Important thing is to confirm the room is available.
I will certainly do that.
And if not, are we going to go to the wine room?
We could actually
9:30 in the morning?
for the number of people that we get at our retreats, we could actually have it at my house. It's actually got plenty of room for up to 20 people.
Or we could go to the, never mind.
No alcoholic beverages, it's not that kind of book.
Yell at each other.
All right, and we have no agenda items for January at this point. Does anybody know of agenda items at this point?
not yet.
Okay, if you think of agenda items, let me know as soon as possible. If we don't get any, then we'll cancel the first meeting in January. All right, and with that, I will entertain motions to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
A second.
We are adjourned.